a scion of many worlds. It charges the moment he's low enough to be in range. 3 massive spiral horns backed by a huge, thick skull. It's almost like a rex, but its grasping limbs are a lot stronger and larger to assist in grabbing food. He shifts to the side and it slams into a massive tree horns first, which then detonates as a huge flow of axiom flies through its horns. Explosive touch on the horns. Interesting. The enormous thing screams and he teleports away to avoid the clubbed tail. This thing is dangerous at both ends, and the crater that follows a burst of axiom lets him know that this thing is beyond brutish. Front and back are deadly and it's hyper-aggressive. "Not scared, are you?" Magrica asks him, and he snorts. "Just making sure I see all its tricks first. No reason to fear what you understand," Jasper replies. Although I think this 3-horned beast is badly named, what about that club tail? It could crater a mountainside with that. They favor the horns, always the horns. The tails are only of use if you dodge. She answers and he gives her an odd look. "Right. Well, I need to experiment with this creature a little. Excuse me a minute," he says, holding out a hand, and several sticks and stones flow up into his hand before he flies up a little and then charges the creature. It lets out a barking sort of sound and tries to weave away. What he does confuses the beast further as the handful of stones and sticks is launched into its face. The impact on the horns and following cluster explosion startles the creature, and it starts thrashing around in a panic. So the horns are a massive threat even from the sides. Jasper notes as he rises into the air with a few flaps to get out of its range. Then it jumps and he jerks backwards with a flap in order to avoid those detonating horns. It lets out a deafening roar in its frustration, and the comparatively bite-sized Jasper just shakes his head. Animals are animals, even if they're one of those stupid breeds that always chooses violence. Maybe its squinty little eyes has something to do with that. The coloration patches of white on black give it the appearance of eyes just under the horns. But tricks like that don't belong to predators. Its evolution is trying to bait something into attacking just under the horns where the creature is at its most obscenely dangerous. But what would attack this thing? It's 5 stories tall and roars like a jet engine. He thinks for a moment as the thing jumps at him again. It's not trying to eat him, it just wants him dead and done. So he teleports behind it and latches onto the back of its neck to see what it does. The answer is freak the fuck out as it thrashes so hard it nearly throws him off. But this thing isn't armor-plated despite its thick hide. So he holds one easily as his foot claws sink into the skin and blood flows. He draws a sword and feels out where the veins are until he finds the big awn in the neck. The Flamberge-style blade goes in with ease and tears it open, and a torrent of blood answers the moment he pulls it out. The bestial bellows turns to screaming as the creature understands it's mortally wounded, but for all its thrashing, mostly side to side, it doesn't think to buck or roll to try and get him off. It takes about a minute for it to finally collapse of blood loss, and he rides it all the way down. He stands up and looks upwards to the Metak watching from above. They haven't moved yet. Something's up. A cascade of roars rolls over him, and the trees around him suddenly detonate into splinters, as if the whole forest was rigged with C4. He goes low rather than high as the splinters reduce the area above him into a shrapnel-filled hellscape. The jagged shards of wood crash to the ground to reveal nearly a dozen of the gigantic creatures. They're herd animals? Interesting. He teleports up high before a trinity of tail clubs slam into the ground next to him and onto the corpse. From high above, he notes that the corpse of the slain beast resists the axiom-fueled detonation. It doesn't even look distorted. Why was this one alone? So how do you like the 3 horns? I think I'm confused. Herd behaviors and protective coloration like those eye spots means that something is willing to attack these monsters. What hunts them? Ripcoils do sometimes, as do a few other things like grand gliders. Grand gliders? He asks, and she points upwards and into the distance. Its moth-like silhouette makes him feel momentarily self-conscious, but he puts it aside. Is it good eating? No. The meat is always disgusting, and the bodily fluids smell like a cesspit. No part of it can be used for anything. It rots too fast, smells awful, and attracts all sorts of terrible little biters. Magrica answers, and he nods. So how do they attack the three horns below us? You know that thing you've got instead of a tongue? The proboscis, he answers. Yeah, that thing. You said before you could probably stab someone with it, right? Right. They do that. Theirs stretches out like a bit spear and are strong enough to drag up the three horns to drink their fluids. Scary. Are they interested in attacking something our size? My size? No. Yours? Maybe? She answers, and he gives her an odd look before shrugging. He looks down just in time to see several of the metak dive onto the backs of the three horns, and then the beasts scream as the wings of the small warriors pierce deeply and rip out huge gashes. So I attacked the right way? Yes, you did. I'm so proud of you. Magrica teases, gushes as she ruffles his hair and antenna a little in a mocking manner before diving down onto one of the beast's necks so hard that she snaps it. The piercing of its major veins is more of an afterthought following up that. Hey, grab your kill and start carrying. One of the metak below shouts up at him as they start lifting the massive corpses into the air. Jasper dives down on his now thoroughly blood-drenched specimen and runs Axiom to reinforce its hide as he grabs on and starts to lift. It's strange to lift something so massive with Axiom. Not only does he have to reduce its weight, but also make himself stronger, make the wind flow around it more easily so it doesn't blow every which way imaginable. Once he gets into the flow of it, it gets easier. Most of this ease comes from both his own experimentation and his observations of the nearby metak. He briefly wonders at what would cause this kind of knowledge to be widespread, then nearly kicks himself when the obvious nearly makes a whizzing noise as it passes him by. So, what do you all do to learn how to lift things like this? You all work very well together for such a group of old and young at once, Jasper calls out, and there's some laughter. Slide swipe, swoop, and loop. Many of the games we teach our daughters encourage teamwork and how to use magic to become really strong, really fast. Our little girls grow up with games where you rearrange a field of boulders as someone counts and then hide in it. They're only allowed to lift up the boulders as they seek for you directly. That's slide swipe. Slide the stones, then swipe them up as you search. And what's swoop and loop? Jasper asks, and she laughs. It's slide swipe, but you can only move the boulders during the count if you're flying. You leave no trails, and to avoid hitting each other, a lot of girls try to loop around. The older metak notes before suddenly letting out what's likely a curse in her language. At least the laughter and shocked gasps of her fellows tells him such. Hey, Mothman! Deal with your cousin! It wants the three horns! Someone shouts, and Jasper turns to look back. Sure enough, the grand glider that was spotted in the distance is coming for them. It sees an easy meal. All right, someone grab my three horn and keep it moving while I explain to the stupid thing why stealing someone's kill is bad manners. Magrica? Want to kill a grand glider? Jasper calls out, and there's some cheering as they clearly like the way he's handling things. An older metak with an eye patch and on whose body is covered in bright white scars fly over and grab his load from him. Without any difficulty, they take the weight and he flutters back before turning. Magrica zooms up beside him and he smiles at her. I did promise fun fighting monsters. Ripcoils, three horns, grand gliders, lots of fun to be had. She notes cheerfully before rubbing her chin. Think it'll attack you? You're a lot bigger than me and your wings make you look bigger still. They're known to eat their own at times. I suppose it's a little late for the Mothman to not look like a moth monster, so let's find out the fun way. He proposes, and she lets out a cackle. "I like it. Charge," she says before blurring forward. She's using his trick for supersonic flight. He hadn't taught it to her, but she picked it up anyways. He angles his wings and follows, the air tearing around him, and he feels it compress in front of him. He has a shocking amount of time to accelerate and then stop to let the wake of his movement slam into the beast that's much, much larger than he assumed. Grand Glider is too small a name for this city-sized horror. Its body is maybe the size of a single block, but its wings are exponentially huge. Each flap must take a huge amount of energy, and he can feel it pull on the local axiom. He has to flap a little harder to stay airborne. Its mere presence is disrupting things that much. He lets out a whistle as he looks for a weak point. Then he jolts backwards and barely avoids a massive spear shooting down nearly the size of his head. His latest addition to his body decides to wake up, and adrenaline flows. The color bleeds away and time flows. He doesn't think, he acts. He zips forward and grabs the still extending proboscis before closing his claws, turning their edges into industrial strength scissors to slice clean through. He vaguely registers something foul from his nose, but the focus is on the thrashing beast above. He rises with a brutal rip at the local axiom, and the entire creature shudders as Magrica slams along a wing and then dives away from a huge amount of dust. He holds out a claw to her and she grabs it. "Be as a blade," he says, and her eyes widen momentarily before she grins wildly. He hurls her at the segment where head meets body on the glider, and Magrica's wings cover her as she spins before flattening out and forming a brutal edge. She's moving so fast that she more resembles a pitch-black buzzsaw that passes through the glider without slowing down in the slightest, and the unfolds to soar up and above the now falling and dead creature to tumble into Jasper. He catches her and holds her gently. "Fun, but my head's spinning." "Sorry about that." "Don't apologize, that was hilarious. We need to find another and do it again." "I'll keep my eyes open," he says as he lets the axiom wash away the exhaustion of an adrenaline crash. His first hit of the good stuff. It felt amazing. Then the smell hits him and his face wrinkles. Magrica laughs. "Just noticing?" "Yes. Oh? Think they'll mind if we pause to clean ourselves off?" he asks. "They'll mind if we don't," she says with a giggle before rising out of his embrace. "Grand gliders are fun to fight, but you need to clean up after. Sorbus leaf is best for it. Follow me." She dives down to the forest below and begins a clear search pattern, searching and searching until she comes across a pond surrounded by pale yellow flowers. Flowers that he starts gathering at her signal. He decides to put a couple into her hair, and she gives him an odd look. "What?" he asks, and her head tilts to the side. "Is this a human thing?" she asks while deliberately mangling the pronunciation. "Human, and yes, I'm flirting with you," he says, and she smiles shyly with a slight giggle. It's adorable. She's a gore-drenched warrior fresh from battle, and it's all he can do to not sweep her up in a hug and kiss her silly.